This is the Youth Soccer Revolution Podcast, episode number 6. Thank you again for tuning in to the Youth Soccer Revolution Podcast. My name is Ernesto Diaz. I will be your host. I want to start out the show with thanking everyone for reaching out to me and giving me the positive feedback. Thank you for the emails and the shout-outs on Twitter. Just want to remind you that if you like the show and you think it's a benefit to others, if you could please give us a review on iTunes. Recently, we were featured on iTunes New and Noteworthy in the soccer section. So again, thank you everyone for that. For episode 6, I had the opportunity to interview a good friend, Drew Ducker, also known as Ducks. I want to thank Drew for coming on and sharing his experiences. One of the things about Drew's experience was the people that influenced him. He had many coaches along the way that had an impact on his development. He's extremely grateful for that and has pointed them out during the interview. But that goes to show how important it is for us to be positive role models and have a positive impact on the players that we coach. As coaches, we do have a great impact on the kids, whether we realize that or not. Drew is currently a professional indoor soccer player, and he also had a few caps with the U.S. national futsal team. So I thought we'd have him on, and he could tell us a little bit about his player development journey and how he got to play on the United States futsal team. Okay, today we are talking with Drew Ducker. Drew also goes by Duck. Drew?
Yep, how are you?
Welcome to the Youth Soccer Revolution Podcast.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on today.
Now, to start out with, Drew, we want to get to know you a little bit. If you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself and give us an overview of your soccer career and how you got started playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. Try to be as brief as I can here. But originally I'm from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, just north of Fort Lauderdale. So that's pretty much where I spent my childhood, playing the game and learning to love the game. So growing up, I kind of did, the rec thing to start with. And then I think at U8, U9, I started getting in the travel program. And for there, I just kind of fell in love with it. So I played travel program all the way through U18. Was fortunate enough in high school to win a state and national championship. Was 3-time all-conference, all-state, 2-time player of the year in my junior and senior year. And we lost in the finals one year and lost in the semis once. So it was a private high school. St. Thomas Aquinas was the name. So we were fortunate enough where everyone on our team played at a very high level of club soccer. Hence the reason we usually made it to the Final Four every year. So it was a great experience, great coaching staff, great players to be around, and was fortunate to kind of have that be an addition to my great club experience as well. When I was U16, I changed clubs to the Boca Gunners. That was when I kind of had to decide, do I want to play with the top team in the state with a great coach and good club? Do I want to stay local? A lot of players these days, they club jump a lot, year to year sometimes. For me, and I still am adamant about when players are so young, as long as the director and the coaching staff are top quality, there's not really a reason to, travel 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever it may be. But when you get to that high school age group, U16, when the academy starts, it maybe at times it makes sense to try to find a team that fits your needs. So when I did that, U16 to U18, all 3 of those years we won state cup, we won regionals once, went to nationals once and finished in 3rd, and then we won Sun Bowl once and were the runners up the year after. So the Sun Bowl is now turned into what the Disney tournament is, the Disney Showcase now, or just the Disney tournament over winter break. So it used to be called Sun Bowl, but definitely one of the elite tournaments in the nation. And from there, obviously everyone wanted to play in college. So I think all 18 of our guys got some kind of full or partial rides to Division I school. So again, I was just very fortunate to be around a coach. At the time, his name was Mike Duncan, who just had a love for the game like us, and he really pushed us to our potentials and found us places to play college. So that was just a great plus for us at the time, having a younger coach who did play at a high level, who cared and saw potential in us. So from there, I bounced into Vanderbilt University. It was a Division I school in Nashville, Tennessee. A little bit different type of environment. I was used to a very South American style of play, a little bit of the German style of play as well growing up, and college soccer for me was a rough experience. Vanderbilt played very direct. I didn't educate myself enough before deciding to go to Vanderbilt about the coach, about the players, about their style of play. It was more on the side of, it was a top 50, top 70 D1 program that I felt I could excel at, and also being a top academic school. So, players go to different schools for different reasons, but for me, on the soccer standpoint, I could have done a bit better research. I struggled through there. I only played 3 years there, had a kind of an up and down career, had some struggles with the coach, and it wasn't until probably after I graduated from Vanderbilt, I had an extra year of eligibility. A good friend of mine, and still today, J.P. Rodriguez, played at Belmont University, which was actually down the street from Vanderbilt. And he kind of dragged me down there, so to speak, and said, "Hey, you've got an extra year of eligibility. Come here and start your master's and use it." And I did. I did. I was very hesitant about it, but I did. I had a great experience there. Played very well. Kind of found my niche and groove, and with the help of a good friend of mine, JP, we both excelled. And that was kind of the beginning stages of me realizing exactly what it takes to play, and some things I had to, distractions, I guess, I had to overcome during my college career, and understanding that, all coaches see the game differently. They see what players have differently as well, and how to use players. So these are some things maybe we can talk about later, but that I had to overcome as a player. So right after that, I did kind of the combine thing. I did a couple trials. I ended up in Miami with the USL team just for a couple weeks. Didn't sign a contract, but it was a brilliant 2 weeks for me there. I learned a lot. My buddy JP actually is the one who brought me down, kind of on a 2-week trial. It was actually the same time Romario and Zinho played there, so you can imagine my 2 weeks was quite an experience. After that,
I bet that was exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they were there. It was great. So it was towards the tail end of the season. Didn't sign a contract, but ended up going to an open trial in Milwaukee for the next part of the year, which is the winter. And Keith pulled me aside after the second day and said, "Hey, I think you've got a ton of potential. We'd love to bring you into Milwaukee Wave camp, and also to the national team, futsal national team camp we're having in the next few months here." So that was, I guess, how my pro career got started. And since then, I got a couple caps in some international games. I think it was in 07, 08. And then after that, was fortunate enough to sign with the Orlando Sharks. After playing there for a year, they folded, and I ended up coming up to Detroit to play for the Detroit Ignition, MISL team at the time. I played for 2 years in Detroit, and then 2 years in Cincy, and now back in Detroit for the last couple. And now everything, the MISL and the PASL have now merged to become one league, the MASL, which is a major arena soccer league. Detroit will be in that league this year, and I'm looking forward to playing again. So I believe this will be my eighth or ninth year playing at what is the highest level as far as the indoor side of things here. And I'm definitely looking forward to another season. Been on break for the summer, and haven't seen a lot of indoor soccer, so I'm definitely looking forward to getting back to match fitness and playing against some real competition, because we will be seeing the Milwaukee Wave, the Baltimore Blast, Syracuse, and Kansas City, and those teams are very, very talented teams. And that kind of brings me where I am today. So hopefully that was not too long, but just a kind of a brief history of my playing career at all levels leading up to this one.
Yeah, no, that was just fine. Actually, I mean, we'd like it to be a little longer because, again, we want to learn from your experience. So actually, I wanted to take you back a little bit when you were a little younger, and just kind of how you started playing. I mean, how did it all start out? Was it something that you came home and said, "Hey, Mom and Dad, I want to play," or your parents kind of put you in a class? How did it all start out?
Sure, that's a good question. If my memory serves correct, a good friend of mine, Andrew Kong, and I had to be maybe 7 or 8 years old at the time. My mom and dad put me in the rec soccer thing, and I played every sport growing up. But I think at 7, 8, 9, a buddy of mine was like, hey, come out for travel soccer. This coach is awesome. Like it's way better than the rec. You're a great player. Kind of that whole thing. And the moms, of course, talked. And so I went out, and it just happened to be about like 30 minutes or so from my house. And my dad was like, hey, like we've got 3 of these down the street. Like you're not playing. We're not driving you 30 minutes for this thing. So of course, I'm 8 years old. I'm upset about it. I don't want to play at all. So I think my dad almost had to drag me out to what was called Coral Springs. What was it? Coral Springs. It was a Coral Springs travel team. I can't remember what their kind of mascot logo was, but it was a Coral Springs, which is like less than a mile from my house. So after the second day of tryouts, I ended up loving it, of course, right away once I got out on the field, and forgot about Dad dragging me there. And that was kind of how I got started. So I was 8, 9 years old at the time into travel. And for the first 2 years, though, I was on the B team. So I wasn't the guy to come out right away and run the show. It was definitely something I had to work on early on and kind of understand the game like any kid jumping into a new sport at a higher level.
Yeah, and I think that's a great lesson, Drew, when you start out. I mean, look how far you've reached as a player yourself, and yet, like you said, I went out and I started on the B team, but you didn't give up. You loved the game. You kept playing, and now look where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, everyone kind of finds their talent at some point, and it may not be at U8 or U10, and parents need to understand that, the best players at U8, U9, U10, U11 are not necessarily the best players at 13, 14, 17, 18, 21.
Yeah, I mean, and I can't remember what book I was reading when they discussed about, when you peak. Are you going to peak when you're 22, 24 years old? Or what happens if you peak at 14? You're the best 14-year-old, and then you never even get to play pro because by the time you're 18, 19, you're no longer the best player.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Ernesto, and a good point that I'm sure I've read the same book as well. And the difference you'll find in a lot of literature today also is that American players peak much differently than Brazilians or Spanish or German players because their youth system program is just so vastly different. A good example is obviously, Messi. Messi, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, he's the best player in the world. A guy like Clint Dempsey, 18, 19, 20, 21, he's playing at Furman. He's probably, maybe a top guy for there. But Furman was not, the top 3 in the nation at the time. So his peak was, 26, 27, 28. And I'd say he's still pretty close to his peak right now, which is great. And he's, 30, 31, 32. So there's definitely a different lifespan of American soccer players versus most of the rest of the world. So that's a great point to mention as well.
Yeah. So what positions were you playing when you were younger?
I think I played about every position. Goalie I think goalie even when I was younger, every position up until probably, 13, 14, 15. I think I kind of found my niche that I was somewhere between an attacking center mid and forward. But honestly, even through college, I flip-flopped a little bit depending on what shape we played. And even now, I'd probably say I'm still kind of a central midfielder player. But I would also play out wide also now, assuming, I played at a high outdoor level. But I think I played every position. I learned different things about them. I think all kids should play different positions just to get a different view, a different aspect of the game. And then, when you hit 11v11, I think you should have 1 or 2 positions you're comfortable with and that you can start to understand and excel in.
Okay. So going back to when you were younger, what happened that made you fall in love with soccer? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot. I'm not sure if it's one moment or a series of moments. I think once I got good, I think that was a cue for me in a sense. It's like, oh man, like I'm good at this, like, and I think that was part of what made me like it more. But I think the bigger difference there, I think once I hit that maybe 13 to U16 age group, there was a lot of coaches kind of like myself now, right? There was a couple guys that used to play on the Fusion and the Fort Lauderdale Strikers on the old NASL that now were playing and coaching or that retired and are now coaching. So I think having some of those players as mentors of mine, as trainers of mine, as coaches of mine, really kind of gave me that inspiration. Whereas some of the other sports I played, there were good levels. I enjoyed them a lot, but I guess I didn't feel that connection maybe with the coach or the sport that made me fall in love with it. And then once I kind of acclimated myself to more World Cup stuff and more soccer, I mean, it was just like nonstop in my brain. And once that happened, there was no turning back.
Yeah. So actually, that led to our next question about the person that's had the biggest influence on you playing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming some of those coaches had a big influence on you.
Absolutely. It's tough to say who was the biggest influence. I guess if I had to point out a couple names for sure. One of the biggest was Lenny Taylor. He was one of my trainers growing up. He played in the old NASL with Pele on the Comets. He's a FIFA instructor. He's coached a couple of the men's national teams in the Caribbean. He's a Jamaican guy. Very, very good, very sharp, fantastic coach. And really worked not only on the technical, tactical, physical part of the game, but big on the mental part. Understanding, aggressiveness and composure and overcoming obstacles. So that was a huge one for me as far as, someone who mentored me on the ball consistently week in and week out. Greg Switzer was one of my coaches as well, from U13 to U15, I believe. He was a good player, a good coach. I would say he definitely improved my technical, tactical abilities, but he kind of was more on the friendship side for me, understanding that soccer is a lot like life. We want to prepare you for the next level, but we also want to prepare you for life. And that really has filtered over into my teachings as well. Something that I feel is very important. That even if your goal is high school or college or pro, or just to love the game, all of these tools that you learn can be used in real life. And him and I are actually good friends today. He was one of my groomsmen at my wedding, so that's a relationship I really cherish and I feel is important. Those were two of the bigger influences, and a couple others. Mike Duncan was one of my coaches from U16 to U17, but I did know him the couple years before I joined his team in Boca. Just a fantastic guy, phenomenal coach, really cared about players. I mean, we were considered a family. We did luncheons, we did trainings on the weekends. Even during high school season, we got together once a week or once every 2 weeks. His care for players and for our team was beyond question. And he definitely helped all of us get into college. And we definitely run into each other probably once every year or two, on a vacation, going home, or just, some Facebooking back and forth. So another big influence. And then Eric Eichmann was probably an influence as far as an inspiration, and we did training as well together. He played for the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. He actually played on the futsal national team for 2 or 3 years, and I believe for the men's national team for like 6 or 8. Maybe it was like the 1990-ish World Cup. I believe he played in a World Cup, but I mean, definitely a pro all the way around. He runs a club now and has been the director of coaching for a club for the past probably 15 years. First class guy, knows all the ins and outs of futsal, of indoor, of outdoor, and knows how to inspire kids. So those were probably the bigger influences. And then my 2 high school coaches, Joby Hughes and John Walsh, were great. I mean, they had kind of the high school mentality under wraps and knew how to push players' buttons correctly, and definitely brought a bunch of kids from all these different teams and clubs and made them one team at the high school level, which is tough to do. So, a couple influences, I feel like I need to at least, those are the ones I feel like for sure need mentioning, and there's others that had some moments or that had some influence, but those are probably the biggest in my lives that have turned me into the player I am for sure.
Yeah, and Drew, you mentioned a few names, but it just goes to show how many people have an impact on you.
Absolutely.
And one of the reasons why you've made it so far is because you've had so many positive influences around you. Thank you for sharing all of them with us. So going back to when you were younger,
yeah,
we always talk about kids training outside of formal training hours with their club team or rec team, wherever they play on. We always encourage them to go and play with their friends in their backyard. How often do you remember playing with friends or in your backyard?
Yeah, all the time, and probably, when I was younger, probably up until probably from 8 to 12 or 13, well, probably 8 to 13 or 14. There's days I'd come home, knock out my homework, and then I'm in the backyard. I'll probably do a little soccer, a little tennis, a little basketball, a little bit of everything, almost every day. And the more I got into soccer, the more those sports turned into soccer in the backyard, or with dad, or with some friends down the street. But once I hit U14, that age group, everyone on my team, I don't say everyone, but most kids on my team were kind of like me. We were a great team. They loved it. We wanted to do it all the time. We all lived within a couple miles of each other. So we would train Monday, Wednesday, and then Tuesday, Thursday, we'd be at the park and play a little 3v3, 4v4 by ourselves. Saturday, Sunday mornings, I would have training with Lenny Taylor, some individual and group training. So, I mean, I probably played every day until coach or dad said, hey, like you need to take a day off because, rest is important as well. All the time, to answer your question, I think the more you touch the ball is, the more you're going to learn, the better you're going to get. It's tough not to say that's not true,
Right. Yeah, and I think your dad telling you to stop, take a day off is obviously saying that you played a lot. So
yeah.
And again, that's probably what helped you. I mean, one of the reasons why you're playing at a high level. So what about your parents? Did they play soccer?
No, actually, neither one of them did. So soccer was a new thing for them. My mom was a basketball player, kind of, piano player. I think she did some cheerleading type stuff as well. But dad was a football wrestler, baseball guy. A little bit of basketball, but his main sports were wrestling and football. So soccer was brand new to him. I guess they didn't have soccer for him very much growing up. It wasn't a big sport. And obviously once they moved to South Florida, the melting pot of culture here, soccer was everywhere.
And you obviously, I know that you coach, but some of our listeners may not know that you coach. What's your soccer player development philosophy?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share some insight on that with you, at least according to me. The biggest thing for me is kind of having an open mind. And I'll kind of come back to some other things. I believe the biggest things is, can players get repetition on the ball, whatever the skill is, first touch, shooting, passing. And then with that said, can they get constant decisions on the ball and off the ball? Those would be 2 or 3 things that I try to hit at every level, and particularly the younger ones, though, is being comfortable on the ball, getting those repetitions you need so that technique is sharp and clean, and then getting decisions on and off the ball so they can understand what they need to do when they have the ball, and sometimes more importantly, what they need to do off the ball on both sides of the field. So those are 2 big things I feel like all my trainings or curriculum has, two huge points I think that young players need. And then from there it kind of varies, depending on the level of the team. We'll do more tactical stuff. Depending on the younger ones, we'll stick to heavy technical side of things, and then the older ones, obviously the mental part of the game is important to teach as well as the physical part. Being fit, being fast, being strong, some of those things. But keeping an open mind too. The game has evolved even in the last 10 or 15 years so much. That making sure that coaches are educating themselves, whether it's a course, whether it's watching, the highest levels in the world, watching the World Cup, studying youth curriculums around the world. I'm a huge fan of what the Belgium and German do. They've spent a lot of money and a lot of time the past 10 or 15 years, and I think it showed for both countries in the World Cup. Because they believed in some of the things they put in their curriculum, and futsal was in both of their curriculums. It's very important at the younger ages, and you see the product of those players. I mean, there's not a German player in the starting 11, or even the first 4 guys off the bench that most kids probably don't know their name or know that every player on that team is good. There's not really a weak position. Moeller and Schweinsteiger and Lahm and even Neuer coming out of the back. He came out of the back so much and wanted it at his feet more than any other player. It was actually kind of hilarious. And the Belgians were the same way. I mean, you've got guys like Hazard and Fellaini. Those guys are all young, early 20s. I'm going to be anxious to see them in the next World Cup, how much better they even are.
Yeah. So, and going back to when you were younger, and this might have even happened when you were older, I don't know, but tell us about a time when you might have struggled as a player and that you might have felt at your lowest point and you thought you may give up playing soccer.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a great question. An easy one and a difficult one to talk about, I guess. When I was a young player, I was very fortunate. There were not many times I felt I had a low. Once I started playing at 8, 9, or 10, I really just I went up. I went up until that college point. So I was kind of on a high, and once I hit college, my freshman and sophomore year, that they were very difficult. The style of play didn't suit me, which I used as an excuse for sure. Then, the coach, the players, whatever it was. But there were things looking back that for sure I could have fixed. I mean, you always have to be in control of yourself, of your own actions, of what you can do as a player to make an impact. And there was many distractions. Obviously, young kid, 18, 19, you're going into college. You can imagine there's a lot of distractions. So it was difficult for me not to be distracted by them, especially when soccer wasn't going great. So probably my freshman, sophomore year, those 2 years in college were definitely lows for me. I didn't. I think I got benched the last 3 games of my freshman year. Then the coach was fired, which was probably even was not a good thing because then I guess I felt I was right in some sense. And then really struggled the next year when the new coach came in to kind of adapt to what he wanted, what he looked for, and really just kind of consistently found myself making excuses about why I wasn't playing or why I wasn't playing well, when really what I should have done is taken a step back and thought about what I could do better as a player. So that took me by surprise. You can imagine 10, 12 years where you're kind of on top or feel on top, and then someone tells you you're not. The blow to your ego, so to speak, and what that does to you as a player. So I really kind of had to look at some of these inspirations and coaches in my life and really kind of have them pick me back up, and found a good friend of mine, JP Rodriguez, who kind of helped pick me up as well. Kind of having a training partner once I moved on from Vanderbilt to Belmont, changed my world. And I just kind of woke up one day and said, if I'm going to do it, I need to do it, and I need to stop making excuses, and kind of made out a map plan and made some long-term goals and intermittently some small-term goals, or short-term goals, excuse me, and just kind of worked my way back into it, and that's what got me to where I am. And it may not have been exactly where I wanted to be, but for sure, I feel like I've done great things, and I'm happy to be where I am, for sure.
So now let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Tell us about a time when you felt really successful and you felt that your hard work had finally paid off.
When I was younger, for sure I had a lot of success. So that was one point in my life, but it's tough to say that I felt like my hard work paid off, even though it did. But based on, I feel like you don't appreciate all the good things until something bad happens.
Yes, I agree.
Very cliche, but it is the truth. So I'd say probably one of the top moments after that was getting called up to the futsal national team, and then 2 years later winning the indoor league when I was up here with Detroit Ignition in 08-09. That was probably where I really felt that all of my hard work paid off, and I had a great season. Was really coming into my own, and we won the title, and I got a ring at the end of the day. So I think that was the moment for sure where I'm like, man, like finally you feel like everything you've done and been through has been worth it. So that would be my best moment, I think. But for sure, getting called up to the futsal national team was a special moment. Anytime you can represent your national team on any level, youth, futsal, outdoor, indoor, it's definitely a special moment for you as a player to represent your country.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you give us one takeaway that you want listeners to learn from your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've got to keep an open mind when you come to obstacles that you don't agree with. That would be my biggest advice, I guess, because there's going to be a coach, there's going to be that sees it differently. There's going to be a player that you may get into it with personally, and he may not like you, you may not like him. There's going to be a system of play that you feel that does not fit you. So really keeping an open mind and not pointing at others, but rather pointing inward to yourself and say, hey, what can I do as a player to make this situation better? And hopefully, with that said, you can lean on some of your influence and inspiration and some of your heroes and mentors to get you through those moments. Everyone's going to say you should be technically sharp or do this, but I think for sure keeping an open mind to learn how to educate yourself and make yourself better when obstacles come your way that you don't agree with.
Yeah. Well said. And Drew, what is the best advice that you have ever received as a player?
One of my mentors, Lenny Taylor, one of the biggest, always hit, train how you would play. He used to say, you never know who's watching in the trees, who's going to come scout, what coach or what scout is going to be out at the training field. So I feel like I had a huge amount of respect for him, where I think when I was young, 12, 13, 14, I literally took it very literal and said, man, like, I have to always put 100% in. I can't slack off. I've got to train harder each day, and I've got to train more than the player next to me. And I think that, because you never know who's watching. You never know, you can always say, oh, you had a bad day when this coach was here, but you never know who's watching. So at all times, if you're always working harder than the next person, if you always think someone is watching for potential for a high school or a club or college or a pro team, I think if you live having that moment while you train each time and play each time, it definitely will allow you to exceed your potential and pass those limitations.
Yeah, I agree with you, Drew. That's some advice I always give out to my players. You gotta train like you play. Do a good job all the time.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us one of your personal habits that helped you reach your success as a player?
To reach it, I would say my discipline in training by myself. I feel like there's kind of set things, most of them are technical, as far as, I'll give an example, maybe this will help answer it better. Like, our indoor season is starting in a couple months. So real soon, I've been playing intermittently, getting fit a little bit, but in the next few weeks, about 6 weeks out from our season start date, at least 2-3 times a week, I'll go into Wide World here in Ann Arbor or High Velocity in Canton, and I'll just spend an hour, a little bit of fitness, and then some ball work, some passing, and then a lot of finishing. Everything that's kind of specified toward my position and my ability, and I'll just make sure I'm real sharp. And again, those repetitions help me get ready. Those repetitions, make it instinctual, so that when game time comes, it's natural and it just happens versus me overthinking things.
And that goes for parents or even kids that they're listening to this. I mean, we're talking with Drew, who's a professional indoor player, and this is how he gets ready. So when kids want to grow up and play at a high level, it's hard work. It's not easy. You don't just step on the field one day when you wake up and you're playing professional. There's a lot of hard work that goes along with it.
Absolutely.
Drew, give us an internet resource or something that you would recommend to parents or coaches that want to learn more about player development.
I think the biggest one for me as a parent or coach and a player would be watching games. It's tough to say that, some of our heroes, even mine, World Cup, EPL, La Liga, even MLS. Watching the game, you would learn so much, especially as a player or a parent learning the game now, to help teach kids. That would be the biggest resource for me. As far as an online one, I don't do too much online stuff, to be honest. Every now and then I'll kind of look for some sessions, or Jose Mourinho will post some things, or I'll kind of, some of the big time coaches, him, Pep, Alex Ferguson, I'll just throw their names into Google and put up, youth curriculum, coaches sessions, and kind of see what pops up. So Google is probably my biggest friend as far as finding different things, not one resource per se. I do think there's a couple good ones out there. I mean, you've got the NSCAA, you've got 442 magazine, you've got some of these other football magazines. that have some good things in it. So
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I'm sorry, did you have another one?
no, I was gonna say, I
Okay.
hope that was somewhat helpful. There's not a resource I per se that I go to. I like to check different things out. So I may like one resource for this reason, and then I'll kind of poke around just to get different perspectives. So I didn't fully answer your question, but
No, I think you're right because I mean, like you said earlier, having an open mind and not thinking that you already have everything, you know everything. I mean, you're a professional. You've played at a very high level, and yet you're still looking for other resources, and that's something for younger coaches to learn is that you can never know too much. You can always learn more, and that's what you have to keep doing and have that open mind.
yep, I
So
agree.
that was great. Thank you.
Yep.
So the next question, Drew, we want to learn again from your experience and to see what you would do. Imagine you were born 5 years ago, or you have a 5-year-old son or daughter, and you have all the experience and knowledge you have today. What would you do different to become a better soccer player, or what would you do to coach or develop the 5-year-old child?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, a very philosophical one as well. I think it would be tough. I for sure would say, hey, you're gonna wake up and you're gonna train and you're gonna train as much as I did, if not more. But I think there's tools that I would utilize differently. Number one, YouTube, watching EPL, La Liga, even futsal games, World Cup. I mean, I feel like there's so much more on the social side of things. Kids are connected to YouTube and to Messi's, and just with the evolution of television and the internet. I think there's so many great online tools for players. You've got iSoccer now that I think is a tool that's headed in the right direction. I think utilizing some of those tools, for myself, assuming I'm the 5-year-old or my 5-year-old, having him do some of those things on his own. One, I think, I'm not behind his back or a coach isn't over his shoulder saying, no, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Hopefully he sees and develops some of that creativity on and off the ball himself, instead of becoming kind of robotic like I feel like some of the U.S. still play at times. So some of those online tools and being able to be self-inspired would be one absolutely I would utilize more. Obviously more futsal, of course. I did futsal when I grew up, but I would encourage all variations of the game. I played beach soccer, I played foot volley, I played soccer tennis, I played soccer volleyball, I played indoor, outdoor, futsal. I mean, you name it. If there was a soccer ball involved, I did it. I would also encourage him to play other sports. Of course, I would want him to love and be awesome at soccer, but I think it's important, and most of the literature shows that you need that hand-eye coordination, the foot-eye coordination, the different kind of movements. And that's what I did growing up. And I think kids, once they reach the high school level, I think they do have to pick one or two sports, but they should be exposed to all sports. I mean, I think the only one I did not do was American football. Because my mom is like, you're not gonna go head to head and be crushed by someone. You're gonna do anything but that. So I literally did everything but that. But I think they should be exposed to all sports. In addition to some of the internet and online stuff, and then having a trainer maybe earlier on, to get some extra time. Coaching is always great. I feel like when you're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, maybe even 13. You've got to have, either friends in the same neighborhood, or you've got to be in real close proximity to say, hey, Mom, I'm going to go down the street with 5 kids and we're going to play 3v3. It's just, I feel like it's a bit more difficult because there's so many youth clubs and everyone's so spread out. So I would say, hey, if you can get kids together more often and play, that's great, where it's a dad just kind of organizing it, or getting that professional training early on. That's something I wish I could have done earlier on at that, probably 9, 10 to 13, 14 mark, and then for sure after. But those are the important years where your skill level can develop exponentially. And as you get older, you can still develop, but it's going to be at a slower pace. So really making sure he was exposed to more futsal, more inspiration online, watching games, more playing by himself, playing other sports. I mean, those would be probably the top 4 things I would encourage my 5-year-old. from 5 to 18 to do. And then, hopefully with the idea that he develops a passion for the game and is good at the game where he can excel and find that mark if he wants to play college or pro or beyond. And, if he's got another sport he likes and he loves and he's good at and wants to do, I'll encourage that as well. So kind of have to take life as it comes to you in that regard. But I think those are four important things for sure that if I was 5 and doing it all over, if I had those four things, I think I would be much better of a player than I am now.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Drew. And what's one piece of guidance you can give parents who have kids who are interested in playing soccer or are currently playing club soccer? What kind of advice can you give them?
Yeah, as a parent, be a parent. If you're knowledgeable of the game, or even if you're not knowledgeable of the game, you want to encourage your kid. You want to let the coach in the club and the ref do his job, and just tell your kid you love them and that they did their best. And when they get older, sometimes even the 10 and 11-year-olds, hey, they come off the field, hey, great job. They're like, Mom, I played terrible today. Like, what are you talking about? So yeah, I think still just encouraging them to work hard, try hard, do their best will go a long way. Some of the more knowledgeable dads, probably like myself, when my son gets older, will be like, hey, like here are things you need to do, buddy, to get better. But which is okay, I think. But for sure, leaning on the coaches and the clubs that they're doing the right thing. And then if you feel, coach is not doing the job, I think for sure just communicating with him in a professional manner, and then communicating with the director of coaching to make sure that you feel you're getting your money's worth, and that their curriculum, their time as a coach, as a mentor to the kids is appropriate, and pushing them in a positive direction, not only on the field but off the field as well.
And so you've mentioned futsal a few times already, and can you tell us how you're involved with futsal right now?
Absolutely. So right now I work with Rob Smith at the East Michigan Futsal League here in kind of Ann Arbor, Detroit, that kind of area. And I think we're in our 6th or 7th year. This past season, I think we had like 372 teams, and we're looking to hopefully add 40 or 50 based on some conversations we've had with some clubs, which would be great. So I spend a lot of my time in the winter just kind of communicating with directors, encouraging them, giving them some education on futsal and why it's important, helping Rob run the league. And then him and I, we've done some clinics, some camps. We run a couple tournaments a year as well. And this winter I'll be opening my own futsal academy. It'll be called Futsal Factory here in the Ann Arbor, Detroit area, where we're going to have some individual and group trainings and really focus on aspects of futsal and how to translate those aspects to a player's outdoor game. So a lot of good things happening, and with U.S. youth futsal, I'm hoping to do a bit more as far as the regional and youth national teams that I'm looking forward to and hopefully will be involved with soon here, to bring some more education and futsal awareness to all of Michigan, as well as to the U.S., and let them know that it's an important part of our youth program, and I think it does benefit kids on a grand scale.
Yeah, and you mentioned, some of the things you have to do because futsal is so new here into the United States. You have to educate some of the directors of coaching for the clubs. What do you tell them so that way our parents and coaches can learn too, the ones that are listening?
Yeah, well, most of the time, I try to let the facts speak for themselves. We immediately compare it with the indoor game on the boarded side, which is an ironic one for me considering I play professional indoor, but there's no professional futsal to play here. But the biggest thing is, one, you've got the safety issue for boarded, where kids aren't their physicality, and their mentality. They don't understand how to use the boards, how to play the boards, whether it's, a bad shot can turn into a great assist in indoor. You can create a lot of bad habits. So, we try to make that point. And on the outdoor side, we say, hey, we're not saying you shouldn't play 11v11 during the winter. We say we should supplement it with futsal throughout the whole year, but in particularly the winter. Some of those things, and then the amount of touches on the ball is a huge one. I kind of refer back to Keith Tozer. He'll say, hey, in an hour and a half outdoor session, he's done some research and some footage that, a center midfielder will touch the ball, maybe like 600 times to 800 times. That same player in a 1 hour futsal session usually will touch it about 2,000 to 2,500 times. If you're touching the ball that much more, if you're making that many more decisions, and if you can only play back to the goalie a certain number of times during a game, there's no boards to bail you out. You can't just kick it up the field. It really forces the player to resolve the problem with the ball. Versus, hey, mom says kick it as far as you can. Coach says let's get it out and clear it. Futsal really enforces good habits and really makes you technically and I'll say tactically sound due to the nature of the game. And I think with younger players, that's a big one. The strongest, fastest kid can kick it past everyone and run by them. In futsal, if you do that, it's going right to the goalie because the field is so small. And if you do that, you're losing possession. So I think some of those things that you see at the 6v6 and 9v9 level, where one or two special players at that age, based on their speed or their ability to shoot a ball from 30 yards out, becomes obsolete in futsal, and it really focuses on the true nature of the game that you should teach at those ages.
So, Drew, and tell us a little bit about, first of all, your website.
Yeah, absolutely. It's drewducker.com right now. So it has a lot of information on myself, kind of my current status as far as me, playing with the Detroit Waza professional indoor team. Gives information on the Canton Soccer Club where I currently coach, gives information as well on some of the individual and group training I do, talks about futsal, special events we have if we bring in Keith Tozer, which we will again this year, tournaments we run, any information about the East Michigan Futsal League we run here. It has a ton of stuff on futsal, and then the other two pages, one is a kind of a blog, so to speak, but just a place where I can put some notes, and I post some cool videos. There was one of an interview with Coach Tozer. There was one of Falcao, the best futsal player considered ever. Some cool futsal videos, and I'm going to continue to add some stuff over the next few weeks and few months here, just to have kids take a look at it and get inspired. And then the last page I think on there is the Chamba page. So that's a friend of mine started the company about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's a clothing line, apparel, and they do tournaments, camps, clinics, individual training. They're based out of Orlando and Costa Rica. So I just kind of help him market some of his gear, and we do a bunch of camps and clinics together each year also, as well as a few tournaments. So a good friend of mine. Trying to promote his brand here as well. So hopefully we're going to get it more involved with the East Michigan Futsal League. And then soon I'll have another link up there that'll be a Futsal Factory. So that'll be a lot of futsal info. It'll be connected to Chamba, and it'll be what I hope will become a futsal academy altogether, where we have several trainings per week, not only in the winter but throughout the year, where we can teach some of the futsal skills and how to translate that to their 11v11 game. So I'm looking forward to adding that this fall and spending a lot of time on the futsal side of things, which hopefully, with everything I've done, if you read through some of my website, with everything I've done, parents, players, coaches will see that I do believe in futsal, and I think it's a vital part of the youth game that we are not fully utilizing yet, and I'm hoping to bring some more awareness and bring some more opportunities for kids to better themselves as players through my futsal academy.
Great. And so the Chamba gear, is that soccer-related gear, or is it like street soccer? Or what is it exactly?
It's a little of both. So the Chamba gear, they have a ton of different streetwear, and they have an apparel uniform line as well. So there's a couple clubs in Florida, I believe, have it. There was a Division III men's team that have the apparel. So a very new company, still in its infancy, so to speak. But yeah, kind of a streetwear mentality as well as a uniform. So they sponsored our last tournament we did, and we called it the Chamba Futsal Tournament up here. So we had we have them do all the designs for the tournament, T-shirts and banners and stuff, and they have some cool futsal gear. So we're hoping to promote that more this year as well through the league and through my academy.
Okay, and then we'll have a link on the show notes so they can go directly to that site as well. So, Drew, you have obviously so much going on, and you're so busy. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing all your knowledge with us. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, Ernesto, I appreciate the time as well and what you're doing for futsal where you're at in the Kalamazoo area. So I'm happy to help out any way I can. Feel free to put my, all my information, my email and stuff is on my website, things going on here. Hopefully I'll continue to add some links so that parents and coaches and players can see some of the benefits of futsal. And I'm looking forward to seeing you this year.
Thank you again for joining us for episode 6. Don't forget that you can catch the show notes at youthsoccerevolution.com. On there I have a few links. I have Drew's website at drewducker.com, also the chambastyle.com website where you can catch all the Chamba gear. I encourage you to check that out and support Drew. If you are in the Detroit area, you can also catch Drew playing for the Detroit Waza indoor professional soccer team. And then if you want to get in contact with Drew, you can reach him at drewducker.com. He's also involved with East Michigan Futsal League in the Detroit area. And don't forget to go on iTunes and give us a 5-star review if you like the show. I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you in episode 7.